Hi. Mari Extension Pack 6R2 adds a powerful new mechanism to the selection group palette that allows you to manage selection group visibilities via filters. From simple word searches to complex expressions, all the way to filtering based on material IDs, this system will greatly improve your experience working in complex scenes. Even and especially when managing massive amounts of selection groups, this system will be a great help. Here I have nearly 650 groups representing the different shapes of the object. And yet using the filters, I can easily isolate parts of the model that are made up of multiple selection groups at once. On top of the filtering, Extension Pack also introduces the concept of visibility sets. Visibility sets allow you to store the individual visible and hidden states of all your selection groups, so you can easily toggle between, add them together, or subtract them from each other without having to re-enter searches in the text field. Before we deep dive into the various expressions and variables you can use to filter, let's cover some of the surrounding interface items. The first one defines the selection group type that filters will run on. By default, this is set to any, meaning filter operations will evaluate face, patch, and object selection group types. Let me hide everything for a second here by entering pipe star into the search field, which is the operator to hide everything. Then let's set the mode to only run on patch selection groups, and finally use the star command to show all groups again. Since I limited the selection group type, only patch selection groups will turn on, and face and object groups are completely excluded from being evaluated and remain invisible. The next element here are Material ID filters that can be used to isolate selection groups that have the same Material ID assigned. While you can manually create your own ID filters up here, usually this isn't really necessary as Extension Pack tracks your scene's Material IDs and auto-creates filters for you. Material IDs can be assigned to selection groups in two ways. To set an ID on just a single group, right mouse click on it and choose the Set Custom ID Color, then select an ID color or remove it. Let's apply this, and in my list of Material ID filters, our newly assigned ID color got automatically added. Another way to assign them is by opening the Material ID Bake dialog down here. If I select all of those red groups and assign a different color and just close the dialog without actually baking the ID maps, then the new ID filter also appeared in the list. When I activate it, only the selection groups become visible that have the new color assigned. They still appear red here in my viewport because earlier I actually baked the assigned group colors into a channel that I'm currently viewing. So Material IDs do always need to be baked down using the dialog in order to be available to use, for example, for masking. For completion here in the list, we can delete filters by pressing the X button, and we can also rename them from those standard names to something a bit more descriptive. To rename, press and hold the hotkey R and then click on the group you want to rename. If you want to clear the name and go back to the automatic one, simply leave the name field empty. Now let's move on to some basic functionality of the filter bar. Whenever you do a search, you will have to confirm the search with an enter press. If you press enter again and the text input has not changed, no action will be taken, which can be annoying if you made a manual change in the meantime. So if I manually unhide a group and press enter again, the new piece is not hidden because for the search bar, no entry has changed. To work around this, there's a force search mode implemented that is activated using Control and Enter. So using that will always reevaluate all filters, and now the manual shown piece is gone again and just my wheels are visible. Next to the search bar, we have a quick way to clear the search. When holding Shift and clicking on the button, we will instead clear the history of the search bar. You can see when I start typing, I get auto-suggestions based on my previous searches. If I want to completely clear that auto-search history, hold Shift, click on the clear button and confirm the dialog, and now your search history will be empty. Now let's finally deep dive into the different ways we can use the filter bar. Everything I'm about to tell you is also explained in its tooltip, and for even more in-depth examples, please refer to the online help. In its most simplistic form, you enter a word to search for in the text field, and the selection group names are parsed for occurrences of that word and shown if a match is found. So here we have activated all groups that have the word light somewhere in their name. We can also search for multiple words by comma separating them, which will act as the OR operator in this case, activating any group that has light or wheel in its name. To string together multiple words that must be present in a selection group name, you can use the plus operator. For example here, window plus frame. To exclude a certain word from being eligible, you can prefix it with an exclamation mark. So here if I type window, I get all of these groups, and now I want to exclude the glass, so I do window plus exclamation mark glass. We can also do subtractions, which are similar to exclusions but work slightly differently. Let me show you an example. If I type roof, I get all my groups activated that have the word in it. I have a selection group down here called top of roof that I would like to stay hidden. However, the group shares faces with other groups containing the word roof. So with a simple roof search, it gets activated. Doing an exclusion with roof plus exclamation mark top of deactivates the right group. However, since some of the activated groups have the same faces in them, the top of the roof remains visible. Instead, I'm going to use subtractions here. So typing roof minus top of will subtract the contents of the group from all other groups, and I'm left with the result I want. Now let's talk about the different variables you can use as part of the search. First, we have three very generic operators that we can use in isolation. We have seen before typing exclamation mark star will hide all selection groups. Typing just star will show them all. Finally, typing pipe or backtick will invert the visibility states. So those three operators are outliers as they can't really be combined with anything else. Next, we have the three selection group type variables, $face, $patch, and $obj. I have shown earlier the global type setting here. Using the variables, you apply those settings directly in the search field while having the option to scope them to specific words. If I type just $face, then I will activate all face selection groups in my list of groups, while object and patch selection groups remain set to hidden. I can also invert this by typing exclamation mark $face, and then any group that is not a face group will be shown. Variables can exist as so-called global variables or local ones. Let me show you the difference here. Let's do $face, window, wheel, plane, plus $object. Here we now have a mix of global and local variables. $face is a global variable as it exists in isolation. Since window and wheel don't have any explicit variables assigned, they will inherit the global variable $face, so only face selection groups are evaluated when searching for window or wheel. Plane, on the other hand, has a local variable $object assigned. So for that word only, object selection groups are searched. I could of course also work with inversions by replacing the $object with a exclamation mark $face, so it evaluates plane both on object and patch selection groups, ignoring face groups. Alright, let's move on to the next set of variables. I have only the front of my tram visible here, and I now want to show only the window. If I do a search for window, all windows get shown again, even the ones I hid previously. So this would be a case for the visibility variables $vis and $invis. If I type window plus $vis, then we search only within what is already visible. I can invert this by doing exclamation mark $vis or use $invis to have the opposite effect. The final variable is related to visibility sets. We haven't covered those yet, but basically over here you can store the visibility states of all your selection groups as a set, so you can easily recall configurations without having to always use the search field. The $inset variable can be used to limit searches to groups that are assigned to a visibility set. So using again the case of my window, I have a visibility set for the front of the tram. Instead of using the previous example of visibility variables, I will instead isolate the front window only by searching in the set. So doing a window plus $inset, followed by the name of the set I want to search in this case front, and I end up with only my front window since this is the only window object assigned to that set. Finally, let's talk about the path search using the expressions. When you import geometry into Mari using, for example, the Alembic or USD file format, Mari will auto-create selection groups for you that match the geometry structure and hierarchy within that file. Here in my scene, we can see we have all the different groups and subgroups for each object in the file represented as a path structure in the created selection group names. The path search expressions allow you to define in which part of the name you want the search to operate in. Our path search begins with $/, followed by what we want to search for. And by adding more slashes, we can define after which number of slashes the search should start. Let me do a search for direction here. All of these groups get activated because they have the term direction right here at the beginning of the name. However, I'm only interested in those groups that have direction in their object name, so the last part of the name. To do this, let's count these slashes. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So let's do $ followed by 5 slashes, followed by direction. And now we have isolated the right selection groups. An easier way in this case though is prefixing it with an exclamation mark. If I do $$/direction, then we will start counting slashes from the back of the name. So this term evaluates everything up to the first slash, but from the end. If I add a second slash, then it evaluates this and this, etc. Right. After all those variables, let's start talking a bit more in depth about visibility sets. Visibility sets store the on-off state of all selection groups in your scene. They do not store any search term from the filter bar up here, but the actual visible state of your selection groups. You can save a new set simply by this option, then activate a set by clicking on it. If you click on this button next to it, then you will load the inverted set, meaning anything that was saved visible in the set will be invisible, and anything that was invisible will be visible. To delete a set, simply click on the X button. There exists a whole bunch of hotkey actions to edit visibility sets, and you can find those listed in the tooltip of the set buttons. First we have set addition and subtraction. If I load a set, then hold Shift and click on another set, the two sets will both be visible in the viewport, as opposed to just clicking on a set, which will hide everything else. If you want to subtract the contents of a visibility set from your current viewport, hold Ctrl and press on a set you want to hide. Next, we have some hotkeys to modify the actual contents of the visibility set. The first one being A. Holding A and clicking on a set will save the state of the currently selected selection group into the set. Let's say I select this group, which is hidden, unhide it, hold A, and add it to my front group. Now this group will be made visible whenever I toggle the front set on. If I hide the selection group and add it again, then the next time I toggle the set, the group will be hidden. This last one is similar to holding D and clicking on a set, which will remove the currently selected group from the set. If you want to completely overwrite the content of the set with the current on-off states of all selection groups, press and hold hotkey O and then click on the set you wish to overwrite. So here I have my wheels group active, and by overwriting my seats group, now seats has the same visibility configuration as the previous wheels set. Lastly, we have the option to configure material IDs for sets. You might have noticed earlier in the visibility set creation dialog that I can assign a ID color to my set. Any visible selection group within that set now has the red ID color assigned. If I add additional visible groups by pressing and holding A to add the currently selected group to the set, then this group will also inherit that red color. If you want to update the material ID on a visibility set, press and hold the hotkey M and click on the set. As with other ways to assign material IDs, Extension Pack auto updates the available filters here in the material ID filter list, so you can use that one as well to hide and unhide selection groups based on material IDs.